G'day, Jinx here, and this is going to be the first in a series of tutorials for using DoomTools to create Doom WADs. Now, there's a lot of ways people make Doom WADs, but I like to use DoomTools because it has a number of really amazing features that allow you to sort of work on the project live, and then kind of like using a compiler on a programming project, you can then compile the application out, or in this case, the Doom WAD out from all your source files without having to actually work inside your WAD, which means you can freely edit your graphics, you can change things, you can swap things around, you can do a lot of editing in a live environment and then just hit build and boop, it outputs the WAD exactly how you would release it. It's an excellent piece of software. It's still in development. There's things that need to be added to it, but it is still fantastic. And in a combination with Slade, I think it's pretty much the way to make large WADs or multiple map WADs. So I couldn't find any tutorials on this or anything modern. When I explain things to other people, like through a tutorial video like this, it helps me learn it better. So it's kind of self-serving, and maybe other people will like this. So let's get into it. The first thing you need is DoomTools, obviously. So just go to your search engine of choice, type in DoomTools. I put GitHub in as well. And it should be the first two. So basically you've got the GitHub and you have the GitHub web page. I'm just going to go to the GitHub just because it's easier for people to say go to the GitHub page. And on there will be a link to the DoomTools website. This is the DoomTools website. It's got an excellent little construction worker Keko. Why are Kekos so cute? I don't know, but they fucking are. This page has a huge amount of information on it. You basically should definitely read that. It's got everything you need. But we're going to run it from the Windows installer and install it. So the way I set up my projects is I have this application here is called Total Commander. It's just a type of file manager, the same as Windows Explorer, but it's based upon the old 386 DOS, Norton Commander. People who use Linux might know Midnight Commander. That's basically a modern Norton Commander. Whatever. The point is, this is just a file manager that I'm very used to using because I've been using it for 30 plus years, and it's awesome. Anyway, so whatever. So don't be confused about this. It's just a file manager. Anyway, whatever. The point is I have a project called DDive Projects. In that project dir, I've got another thing called Doom Projects. And in that dir, I've made a directory called Resources. Now, I place a underscore in front of some directories. That's just a Windows thing because Windows directory sorting is so dodge. It basically just forces the directory to the top of the Explorer list because underscore reads before numbers, before letters, and before most special characters. So if you put an underscore, just forces the directory to the top, makes it easier to click on for those storage directories and stuff. So don't worry about that. It's basically just called Resources. This is where I put all my resources, like my apps, my texture packs, or anything that I use in multiple projects. In that, I've got a directory called Apps, and in that apps dir, I've installed DoomTools, Slade, and Ultimate Doom Builder. Now, Ultimate Doom Builder is obviously the map editor. Slade is obviously the asset editor that everyone knows, and DoomTools is just basically this thing. I've also got a directory called Engines, and in there I've got my iWads, and I've installed the GOG version of Kex Doom, I've got Desada Doom, and I've got GZ Doom. And that's because when I make WADs, they're the three ports I target. I target Desada as priority 1, Kex as priority 2, but basically I always want it to be compatible for those two. And if I can, which I usually can, I also make it compatible with GZ Doom simply because that is the most common port used by the largest pool of players. So that's basically how it is set up to begin with. Now, when you install DoomTools, it'll ask you if it wants to add the directory, the install directory, to the system path. Say yes. So anyone who uses Git, even on Windows, who has experience with command line inputs, knows that if you have something into the environment path, you can run it from any directory. So if I just come into the root of my project folder and I just load up a command prompt and I just type in DoomTools-GUI, even though that executable is not anywhere in that directory, it'll still find it because it's in the environment path. And that becomes very important because while this has a very cool UI, I do most of my work in DoomTools using the command line. For example, one of the things I do is there's this command on the main page, which is a more thorough update. So if I just copy that and I just paste that into here and go blam, it'll update everything as needed, as typical command line interfaces will. Oh, it can't, I've actually got DoomTools open, the GUI open, so it gave me an error. So let's just do that again. And that way you can just keep up to date. Now I'm going to talk about some of the tricks that I use with bat files to automate some tasks. For example, I don't remember this big long update command. In the DoomTools GUI, there is also help check for updates, but I don't know whether that is the comprehensive update that this command line gives you or not. So I've just been using this. Okay, so that's basically the setup. We have our Slade, we have our project directory, and we have DoomTools all installed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a DoomTools project. So we just go, I'll do this through the GUI just to make it easier for you to see. So I'm going to go Tools, DoomMake, New Project. I'm going to choose a WAD project and I'm going to select my path, which in my case is just D drive projects, Doom projects. I'm going to call this DoomTools TUT 01. I'm going to make it a maps project and an assets project. Now here it will ask you if you want to use a dehacked. Now dehacked, as you know, is a way of adding custom code pointers into the WAD to do fancy things. It's a whole subject in itself. But not only will it allow you to use WACT or DH9000 or various other formats, you can also use a custom one called DecoHack, which is what Mr. M. Trop has invented, called DecoHack. Now, DecoHack is kind of like a scripting language. It's basically a human-readable semi-programming language that DoomTools will then convert into dehack file, which means it's pretty much the best way to do it because it means that it's a lot easier to edit and just see what's going on because it's human readable. It's a lot clearer. This is also going to have new textures, so we're going to go yes. Now there's three options here, and I'm going to do yes, the project itself with Boom extensions. I'm not going to use version control, but I usually do. So when you do version control, it basically adds GitHub README files and stuff to initialize directories. I'm not going to go into how version control works. If you'll know if you want to use that. And here it says, do you want to run your project from DoomWake? I'm going to say no, because I prefer to do everything by command line. So I'm just going to go create project, blammo. I'm going to call this DT underscore tut underscore 01. And it's going to ask me where my iWAD is. Now, as I said before, I've got projects, Doom projects, resources, apps, engines, iWADs, and I'll select Doom 2 WAD. Now it's going to ask for the target DecoHack format, and we're going to do MBF21 because that's the format that my WAD is going to be. And I'm just going to hit do nothing. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to go save workspace as. I'm just going to save that into my project folder, into the root of the project folder. DT tut 01 workspace. Okay, and we're pretty much done. Boom, exit. Now, if we come over here and we look in our folder, you'll see that it's created a project folder for us. We have a builder that contains all the build project files will end up in here. We have distribution where you're doing your finals. You've got places where you can put in scripts and all sorts of fancy things. And the one that I use the most, obviously, is the SRC, which is the source files. So you've basically got a couple of different sections here. You have assets, which has all the global assets, sounds, sprites, and whatever. You've got
your deco hack, where you actually put in your, your deco hack code, which that gets turned into the, the deco, the D hack. You've got your maps saved in maps, and then you've got textures where you can place textures in here, and these will also get imported into your final project. But there is something else we want to actually do here. In this same directory, create a directory called WODs, and inside that, we're going to create a directory called textures. And I'll show you why in a sec. Finally, in the builder, I'm going to make a directory here called WODs. And coming down here into the doommake.properties, I'm just going to edit that. And I'm going to come down here, assets. I'm just going to type in /wods/dt tut01.wod, and I'm going to copy that for the other ones as well. So this says textures, so I'm going to go txt textures. Oops, this has got to say assets. And the reason we do this is because not only will this output the compiled final project, it also outputs all the parts of the WOD into separate resource WODs, which you can then give to your prospective mappers. So you can give your deco hack stuff and just the assets to whoever's handling making your guns or your monsters. You got textures, so you can set up, give them to mappers, whatever you need to do. I like to keep them separate from the main folder though. Map text.wod. And I leave everything else as is, basically. Now, I just want to stress that this is a completely optional step. The reason why I do this is because I like to separate the component WODs into a separate directory from my main WOD, just for an organizational thing that I like. But if you leave these blank, if you don't touch this file at all, the application will still make these WODs and it will automatically name them. It'll just place them in the root of the builder along with all the other data that's created. Also, if you look in this file, there are actually other options that you can set to save into other locations and save names that you like for other aspects of the creation. So say you want DecoHack to create your dehacked file, you can define where that is placed and how it is named by editing this setup file and adjusting these property values. Other small files of note inside source, it's got the WOD info here. This is a template for ID Games for when you're finally going to upload to ID Games, just so it's very easy for you to, upload that to ID Games. And also there's a little file here called credits. So as you're building your WOD, you can just type everything that you're pulling from the community into this credits folder, and it's nice and organized and saved, and then you don't have to worry about, oh, where did I get that wall texture from? Just write it in here as you go, and everything is saved into the WOD for reference. Okay, so that's basically all we have to do. We've got our project, we've got our source files. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to load up Ultimate Doom Builder. I'm going to go new map, MBF21, map 01. I'm just going to make a small little room. I'll put a dude in it. And I'm just going to save this as, go to my project, go to source, go to maps, and type map 01. Bam. And that's saved in. Now, so inside my command line, I just type in doom make. And what it does is it reads the map files and the DecoHack files and all the different stuff inside the source directory and then creates the WODs for you. So if I now go into my build folder, I have dt-tut01.wod, and inside the WODs folder, I have my assets, my maps, my map text, and my textures WODs. So if I now just run Doom,
there is my map, okay? And there's another of other commands. So basically you got doom clean. So if you do this, it'll just clean the build directory completely. And sometimes you need to do that just to sort of get everything working. Why do all this is the next question. And one of the big things is, so if I just load up Slade, this is the asset manager, and I'll just load up my Doom 2 iWAD. Basically, as you know, there's all the stuff for Doom is in this iWAD. So you've got, and this stuff can't be copied because it's copyright, okay? So you've got your sprites and all that kind of stuff. So whenever you're creating a WAD, if you use textures, say, or sprites or whatever, or these textures or whatever you're doing, you can't actually have them inside the WAD when you release it. So there's functions inside Slade to strip this data out of the map file. So when you upload the file, all the copyright material is not included. Additionally, if you're using a texture pack, like say I'm using OTEX, but I'm only using 3 or 4 textures from OTEX, I don't need to include the entire 75 megabyte texture WAD with my map. What I do need to do is include just the textures I use and then credit the makers of OTEX. And what DoomTools will do is when it does the build, it'll read the map file, it'll read what the map file is using, and then it will rip out from your data that you've placed in here raw, or the data you've put in the convert folder, or even texture WADs themselves, which you're going to put into the WADs textures. And I'll show you how that works. So if I just go into my archive, I go to, where is it? Games, Doom, resources, textures. If I just come down here, so inside my resources thing, I'm just going to write texture packs. Let's get OTEX is always good, and we'll get Jimmy text. So we'll just copy them from my server into my resource file. Then I come to my source file, I go into source, I go into WADs, I go into textures. I'm just going to copy in Jimmy text, and I'm going to copy in OTEX. So that is a total of almost 100 megs of just textures, but we're not going to use 100 megs in our WAD, right? We're only going to use a couple. So the first thing I need to do is I go into my credits and I just do something like texture packs, OTEX, and Jimmy text. That's already saved. Now I know no need to worry if I'm using it or not. And there's a lot of fancy stuff we can get into later, like you can actually output these log files that'll show you exactly what textures you've used from what pack. So if you put in a whole bunch of texture packs in here that you don't actually end up using, you can actually use that log file to refine your credits before final release. So let's go back into my map. I'm just going to go edit the map options, and I'm going to add the resources from WAD. I'm going to put in WADs, textures, Jimmy text, add resources, OTEX. So now if I just go to the wall here, I've got Jimmy text and I've got OTEX here. So let's go to OTEX. We'll pick a very obvious OTEX texture. That won't be, here we go. That's OTEX. Can't get more OTEX than these kind of things. And over here, I'm going to pick a Jimmy text, something that we'll recognize. How about one of these UAC boxes, darker UAC boxes? Okay. So if I come in down in here, you can see everything's fine. So now if I save that and I go back to my build and I do another doom make, if we read this log here, which I'm not saving out, you can see what it's doing. So basically it's scanning everything we need. It's working out what flats we need. It's working out where I'm getting things from, what. So it says I'm extracting a texture from Jimmy text. I'm extracting a texture and a patch or whatever from OTEX. And then it's merging them all together when it creates the WAD. It's pretty awesome stuff. So now if I just type in Doom, you can see that this is automatically placed in, okay? But here's the important part. If I load up Slade and I load up that WAD, you can see that it's just imported just those graphics that I used. Okay, now the reason why there's two is because this is a patch graphic. I won't go into what that means. But the point is, this is ready for release. It's small, it's streamlined, it hasn't got multiple graphics, and it hasn't got any of the Doom 2 copyright stuff in it either. And this is a huge, huge time saver in my opinion. And it's not just textured WADs you can use. You can do it with pretty much anything. So remember, in our source file, we also have assets, global, color maps, graphics, music, sounds, sprites. You can put all the stuff in here and that will be imported. And there's also this convert directory, which basically is all the same directories again, but whatever you place in here will be converted from whatever formats you use into the correct formats. And not just images. I mean, sure, you can put in true color PNGs or Targas or, you know, whatever you want, JPEGs. But you can also put in WAV files. You can also put in whatever kind of formats you want, and it'll automatically convert them. Like if you want to make a palette, you can just chuck into the palette directory a true color editable image that you're experimenting with. And when you do the build, it'll create the flat, and it's so easy to use. And the important thing is, like when you're working in Slade, you're kind of working inside the live WAD file. So you're importing from wherever your working directories are, you're converting them, you're saving the WAD file, you're testing. This way, it's like the WAD file is splayed open. It's sort of like the power of working on a PK3 directory structure WAD, but in a traditional WAD, which is awesome. And what's even cooler is that it will still use the same merging techniques as your WAD textures here, okay? So if I just put a graphic into texture 1, like an image, and I don't use it in my map, it will not be imported. But the important thing is that I can edit it, you know, which I just think is beyond cool. And something it's so much more intuitive. Okay, so now we've basically got a working project. Let's just do something a little fun just to show you some of the power of DoomTools in action. So what we'll do, we'll just make a custom title screen and a custom inter screen just really quickly. So let's just go Doom Guy into DuckDuck, and we'll just grab an image. What are we going to grab here? Let's put Doom Guy Classic. Find a nice, here we'll just use this one. There's a very famous image. I'm just going to copy this image and I'll load up a image editor. Now, not the super widescreen, but basically widescreen graphics for the major screens are 426 by 240 pixels, I think it is. So I'm just going to crop this, and a quirk of Doom, I'm not quite sure why this is, but when you resize the image, you actually need to go 420, but make the height 200, like actually shorter, and sort of squish it a little bit, but it appears fine when you load it. I don't know why that is. Okay, so I've just made this little image, okay? Very, very simple. Now this is just something I'm grabbing off the internet, so it might not, the colors might not convert perfectly. We can look at that later on in another video. So we'll come down to my project. I'll go to Doom Projects, I'll go to Doom Tut, I'll go to Source, I'll go to Convert, and I'll go to Graphics. And you can actually put as many directories as in here as you want. Even subdirectories, I think. Not that I've tried subdirectories, but we'll just call these ones screens. And then I'm going to save as a PNG, TITLEPIC. Bam. And let's find an INTERPIC as well. So let's go back into here. We'll just type in Doom exit and see if we can find a nice sort of end screen, just something quick. Don't want to spend too much time on this. Let's type Doom kill maybe. See if there's something a bit better. How about this one? So let's copy this and do the same thing. We'll paste it in. We'll crop it to the right proportions.
this is just a demo. Obviously, it doesn't really matter what we do. And I'll just save that one as well. And I'll call this one INTERPIC, I think it's called. So all I've done is save PNG files into the source dir, the convert dir, into the graphics dir, and I've put a, if I have a look at my project I'm working on called Nox, basically in my convert graphics dir, I've got screens, I've got texts, I've got map names, you know, so you can have like maps and titles, all these things sorted, and they're editable. So if I just want to edit enter one, I can just edit this file, you know what I mean? And it will update. So you can have, it's very, very flexible. And unlike using Slade, these are still editable PNGs. So as long as you've got your palettes, you know, understand how palettes works, they'll convert fine for you. And of course, you don't need to make them convert. You can use raw lumps that you can place outside of the convert folder or whatever you want to do. So if I just go into my build now and I do doommake, blam, and then I just run this, boom, done. Perhaps if I, let's just load up Doom Builder and place an exit on that map as well. We'll use Jimmy text and we'll just put a switch here. How about, I'll just use this one. Let's not get caught up in editing here. Okay, let's build that again and let's run it. And there's our exit screen. So that's simple, you know, and you can do all sorts of stuff. So we go to free MIDI. I don't know, what are we going to put in here? Mario. We go to scripts. We go to source, beg your pardon. We go to assets. We go to music. Come in here. I'll just go to my download directory. I'll just copy this in. I'll just call this Mario1.mid. What I'll also do is I'll come into global and I'll make a text file. I'll call this UMAPINFO. Right, so I'm just going to go map01, open the brackets, and I'll go level name equals testing this stuff. I'll just call it DT-TUT01. And then I'll also go music equals Mario1. I forgot to put the quotes around that. Let's try that again. That's working. And you'll also note that the map is now called DT-TUT01. So all I've done is made the UMAPINFO inside the global assets dir as an editable text file. I can just do whatever the hell I want with it. And this is basically how it's going. Now, you'll note that the graphics that I have here, so the TITLEPIC, it looks like that, but when it's being converted to the Doom palette, it's not converting very well. This is a completely separate problem and something that you'll have to get used to if you want to work in DoomPal or if you run a custom palette. But anyway, you can just pick something better, like a different image. And like, say we don't like that image. Say, you know what, I don't like that title image. Why don't I just use something else? Why don't I just use good old-fashioned Doom image? How about this one? Why not? See if this one works better. Okay, it's about the right size. And so forth. The point is, because we're not editing in Slade inside the application,
we have all this freedom to modify our source before it's built or as it's being built without, see, we have our map files, we have our graphic files, we have our automatic importing texture packs from our textures. It is sweet the way it works. Basically, that's the way DoomTools works. It allows you to create a source for your project in the same way you would if you're, say, building an application, like a programming application, you know, like, and when you hit the build, it'll create the final WODs. So not only do we get, like if I go into here, not only do we get the actual WOD itself, DT-TUT01, which has map 01, right? But you could have like 50 maps in there, right? And it will still be added. It's got a UMAPINFO. It's got some custom graphics, custom sounds, all very, very simple. It also creates these WODs here. So we've got the assets WODs, the maps WODs, the minimax WODs, and the texture WODs. So if I load that texture WOD in Slade, you can see all the textures that I've used are in there, which means I can then pass that texture WOD to a mapper, and then they can just start mapping and have just what they need for the mapping. Same if I want to pass the sprites or whatever I want to do. Very, 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 very handy. Now there's this is just like right on the surface of what DoomTools can do. It's got some amazing little features, but this is enough to get started, and I'll do the next video next time. So hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys next time.